Hello and welcome to this latest episode of Chasing Creativity. I'm Kiran Manral, your host. Every week I do a deep dive into creativity. Sometimes I chat with a guest and at others, like today, I chat with you. A lot of folks wonder what is the simplest thing they can do to boost their creativity on an everyday basis. And I'm here to tell you the simplest thing you could do. Just walk. I'm not saying this, the research is. Let me tell you more. Most of us do know that we need to take 10k steps a day, which by the way is a completely arbitrary figure that came about because believe it or not, a Japanese script character for 10k resembles a man and a Japanese speedometer company set it. Of course, it is always good to keep moving. A study in JAMA Neurology found that walking about 10,000 steps a day was linked to less cardiovascular disease, reduced 13 types of cancer and dementia. Taking 10,000 steps a day is the same as walking 4 or 5 miles depending on your stride, but I'm not here to tell you that. I'm not here to tell you that walking more is good for your health. You already know that, don't you? But did you know that walking is perhaps the simplest way to kickstart your creativity? Just plain walking every day, regularly, without bothering about your gait, stride, all those factors, and enjoying yourself while at it. Don't believe me? Here's who did it. Einstein, Asimov, Beethoven, Freud, Faulkner, Kafka, Hobbes, Descartes, Tolstoy, Hawthorne, Tchaikovsky, Darwin, and Dickens. They all went outside for a nice long walk every single day. In his book, Daily Rituals, How Artists Work, Mason Curry talks about dozens of prominent writers, thinkers, and creators, including Ernest Hemingway, Maya Angelou, and Brent Franklin, to name a few, focusing on their daily routines. And guess what? Most of them took nice long walks every single day, through the woods, through the city, wherever they could. Their walks were sacred to them. It wasn't listening to music and podcasts on their walks, mind you, but listening to their thoughts and taking in their surroundings. Many of them considered walking a sacred time for allowing their thoughts to percolate and to take in one's surroundings in a relaxed, unencumbered way. They repeatedly spoke of great ideas striking them when they were on their walks, away from the grind. Charles Dickens stated that he walked around 30 miles per day thinking about his writing. Another Charles, Darwin, was also an avid stroller. Winston Churchill too. The wonder of walking dates back to ancient Greece actually, where Aristotle created the walking school, peripatetic school of philosophers, where they walked and they thought. Wallace Stevens wrote his poetry while walking to work. He did a day job. I write best, he said, when I can concentrate, and I do that best while walking. Modern-day novelists like Naomi Alderman go to walkabouts too. She writes 200-word bursts between regular 15-minute strolls. The most beautiful writing on walking was done by Rebecca Solnit. She said, "Walking is a state in which the mind, body, and the world are aligned. Walkers," she said, "are practitioners of the city, for the city is meant to be walked. A city is a language, a repository of possibilities, and walking is the act of speaking that language, of selecting from those possibilities. Just as language limits what can be said, architecture limits where one can walk, but the walker invents other ways to go." She said this in Wanderlust, A History of Walking. There are more wise words on walking. Thomas Bernhard said, "There is nothing more revealing than to see a thinking person walking, just as there is nothing more revealing than to see a walking person thinking." The author of The Wind in the Willows, Kenneth Graham, said that solitary walks set the mind jogging, make it garrulous, exalted, a little mad maybe, certainly creative and suprasensitive. And Thoreau, always Thoreau, who believed that every walk is a sort of crusade for returning to our senses. Who else walked? Steve Jobs used to have walking meetings. Mark Zuckerberg has meetings on foot. For me, the famous philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche sums it up the best. He says, "All truly great thoughts are conceived while walking." He knew. When he was 33, he was exiled across Europe. He lived in lodgings. He walked through the Black Forest regularly, writing, "I am walking a lot through the forest and having tremendous conversations with myself." He walked through the same routes. He was half blind. He walked 1 hour every morning and 3 hours every afternoon, hoping someday to have a house of his own. I would walk for 6 to 8 hours a day, composing thoughts that I would later jot down on paper. That summer, he wrote The Wanderer and His Shadow, filling 6 small notebooks with thoughts he jotted down while on his walks. To quote him, "During my long walks, I had wept too much, not sentimental tears, but tears of happiness, singing and staggering, taken over by a new gaze that marks my privilege over men today." Through the years, he walked for almost 6 hours a day. He wrote the books that would become his legacy: Zarathustra, The Dawn, Beyond Good and Evil, The Joyous Science, on the genealogy of morality. In his words, we do not belong to those who only have ideas amongst books when stimulated by books. It is our habit to think outdoors, walking, leaping, climbing, dancing, preferably on lonely mountains or near the sea, where even the trails become thoughtful. Like most creative geniuses, he was onto something that modern science has only just begun to comprehend. I'm going to talk about the research now. What does the research say? A 2014 study from Stanford University included 4 separate experiments that demonstrated how walking boosts creative thinking in real time and shortly after. Walking increased creative abilities for 81% of the participants in the study. The average participant increased creative output by around 60%. If that doesn't have you tying your shoelaces and getting out of the door for a walk, I don't know what will. Walking contributes to divergent thinking. It triggers thoughts while moving, leading thoughts to move from one idea to another. And of course, walking is also a mood enhancer, leading to endorphin release. How can you incorporate walking into your routine? It's easy. All you need is a sturdy pair of walking shoes and the time. You can walk anywhere, in your neighborhood, on the road, drive out to a park and walk there. Any place you feel like walking, you don't have to have a destination in mind. You don't have to walk outdoors. You don't have to walk in the woods. You can just walk in the city. But sometimes walking in the city may not always be a good idea if you're dodging cars and avoiding being run over. The Stanford research found that while walking outdoors did enhance creative thinking, it didn't help any more than walking on a treadmill inside a room facing a blank wall. Walking outside or inside, walkers came up with twice the number of creative responses compared with those who had just been sitting still. Is there a certain way you should walk? Not really. You just need to walk at your normal gait, not too fast, or your focus will be on your speed. Don't focus on your speed or your steps. Walk till you feel yourself getting into what is described, for the lack of a better word, the zone, where the physical act of walking is mechanical and repetitive, leaving your mind free to wander. You walk alone. Walking with friends, chattering 19 to the dozen, trying to keep pace with them does nothing for creative thinking. You don't need to do large chunks of time walking. Even 15-minute spurts of walking are good enough to kickstart a creative block. Move away from your desk, walk around the house, walk around the neighborhood, go do some errands at the grocery store. You can do no agenda walking, just for the sake of it walking, anytime walking. There is a bonus, of course. It not only fires up your creative juices, but it also helps you get fitter in the process. I hope this episode encourages you to incorporate at least an hour of walking into your daily routine, or at least gets you thinking about it. I know I must. I need to get back to serious walking. Will you? And with that, this is a wrap on this episode of Chasing Creativity, and this is Kiran Manral signing out. Remember, if you are stuck creatively, take a walk. Through history, the best minds have found that walking, whether a 5-minute jaunt or a long 4-hour trek, has helped them compose, write, paint and create. I'm serious, I really am. Take a walk. We will return with more such ideas and suggestions on how you can overcome creative blocks. I do hope you found this episode of value. Do let me know your thoughts on my social media. I'm at Kiran Manral everywhere. And remember to subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, BingePods, and wherever you get your audio content. See you next week.